Hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Maggie Love. I am the chair of Committee on Legislative Action for Student Government, and basically that's the student link between the university and the local, state, and federal communities. Thanks very much for coming and joining us tonight. Just as a quick disclaimer, this event is sponsored by Student Government Association, the Cynic, and the Department of Community Development and Applied Economics. The use of University of Vermont's facilities for this event does not constitute an endorsement of the university of any of the candidates here. The University of Vermont does not endorse these candidates or organizations or any other candidates or organizations in connection with this or any other political campaign or election. That's out of the way. So specifically this academic year, we've really been focusing on spreading the word about the upcoming March elections. This year's elections are unique because in addition to every city position up for grabs, including the mayor, to school board positions, there's also been a new ward added as a result of redistricting in Burlington, and that's the 8th ward. And the 8th ward is about 70% students, and in combination between Ward 1 and Ward 8, and Ward 1, if you don't have an idea, is kind of down Colchester Avenue. And then Ward 8 encompasses almost all of on-campus housing. So it's really an unprecedented amount of students in two large areas in Burlington. And while we always want to remind students that when they come to UVM, they're not just coming to a college campus, they are also joining a diverse and unique community. This new Ward 8 kind of gave us a new opportunity, a revitalized opportunity to remind students that they are community members and to reach out to community members as well. So we have here the Ward 1 and Ward 8 City Council candidates. We'll start off with some introductions of our two panelists here, and then also the candidates ask our questions, and then we'll open up to the audience. And then we'll kind of allow some time for final statements at the end. If you have election-specific questions about registering to vote, dates, stuff like that, I'll be here after, so you can ask me. Also, COLA Committee on Legislative Action has office hours in the Student Government office upstairs during the day, so feel free to contact us in that setting as well. And now I'll pass it off to Nell and Jason.
Like Maggie said, my name is Jason Lucci. I'm the speaker of the UVM Student Government Association Senate, and I'm honored to be here as a panelist this evening.
Hi, sorry, my microphone doesn't work apparently. I'm Nell Auchincloss. I am on student government, and I'm also working with the CDAE department with a senior level course to increase voter turnout in this upcoming election.
So we'll start with Adam, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you.
Hold on. Oh, wait, Sharon's is mine just came. Hold on. Okay, there, you should be good.
Hey, we're on.
It was my fault. Sorry.
All right, we're on. At the end of my time. My name is Adam Roof. I am a permanent resident here in Ward 8. I'm an alumnus of UVM. Came to school here in 2007, graduated in 2011 with a dual degree in political science and English. I also have a minor in Vermont studies. One of the passions that I had during my time in school was studying local Vermont politics, and now here I am participating in it. Some of the things I did at UVM, because I think they're relevant. I worked on a lot of different boards and advisory boards and committees, some of which Dean of Students Advisory Board, the Peer Judicial Board, Academic Integrity Council, and the other one is the Board of Trustees. I was a trustee here from 2008 to 2011, where I worked on large-scale fiduciary responsibilities for the university. Since I've graduated, I've worked on Democratic campaigns in Boston. I've also started my own business in South Burlington, which I'm still involved with today, and I currently reside on Buell Street.
Thank you. I want to thank the Cynic, the CDAE department, and the student government for really covering this election because as Maggie emphasized, students really are community members and they need to be engaged. Having attended the Senator Bernie Sanders event, students voting and really giving their voice in these elections is critical. So my name is Brock Gibeon. I am the student candidate for Ward 8. I was born in Ithaca, New York, a city very similar to Burlington in that both are academically and environmentally focused. They deal with the same sort of college town issues that we will really address tonight. I chose Burlington and UVM because I wanted to stick to the same environment that my hometown felt like, but I wanted to go somewhere that was opening, that was comfortable, and really revolutionary, and Burlington is that place. I have experience on the student government and the interfraternity council, two of the largest governing bodies at UVM representing student matters. And I think that's really important because as I am pursuing a dual degree in mathematics and economics, my multidisciplinary background will help enhance my ability to acquire expertise in a short time frame and devise creative solutions to challenging goals. So I've been amazed by what Moreau, the mayor, has accomplished, being endorsed by him, being supported by the majority of the city council and the city council president, Joan Shannon. They've really helped me and supported me throughout this campaign. My relationships with Representative Ram, Representative Ray Schultzen is really critical. And thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sharon Busher. I'm a city councilor and I currently represent Ward 1. I'm also a UVM grad, but a few years earlier than the two people beside me. I currently work at the hospital and I am what is called a technical specialist in transfusion medicine. I didn't grow up in Vermont. I grew up in Massachusetts and then came to Vermont as a student and then stayed, like a lot of you probably will do. What I want you to know about me is that when I first started, I've been on the city council for quite a few years, but when I first started, there were meetings between the administration of UVM and the city of Burlington. They speculated what students wanted, but they didn't really find that out. And so early on, I started what was the liaison committee for students and city government, and that morphed into what now has become the community coalition, which really you have empowered by your students. It's a really important tool for this community to find common solutions to the problems we all face. And so I look forward to representing you now and in the future. Thank you.
Let's try again.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm Selena Colburn, and like Sharon, I'm currently a city councilor in Ward 1. I am running for the East District City Council seat, so that's Wards 1 and 8. It's a new kind of city council seat. I was actually born and raised in the East District here in Burlington. I work here at UVM over in the Bailey Howe Library. And I have loved my time on city council. I really want to go back and keep working on the things that I've put into motion in my first term. So some of those things are digging in pretty deeply on neighborhood issues, including landlord accountability, working on climate action and divestment from fossil fuels with the city's public funds, being a strong voice for reproductive rights in the face of our buffer zone strike down here in Burlington, working on affordable housing and student housing, and bike and walk safety issues. And I had the good fortune to work with students on a couple of issues over the last year. So students really brought some issues to my attention, and I brought forward a resolution on overuse of antibiotics in livestock farming that we were able to pass. And is that it? And also a divestment resolution. Thank you.
It seems that I have to do this every time. Now try. There you go.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here tonight and being a part of this debate. It's really great to see so many people out here and so many students in the crowd. My name is Carmen Scholes. I'm running for the City Council seat of the East District in Burlington, which is, as Selena said, the combination of Wards 1 and 8. I'm currently a senior here at the University of Vermont, and I'm studying community entrepreneurship within the Community Development and Applied Economics Department, which has helped with sponsor this debate tonight. And I've loved my time in CDAE, and I'm so glad that I chose to be in community entrepreneurship. It's been great. I came to Burlington because it was a perfect hybrid between where I grew up, Brooklyn, New York, and where I spent my summers, Cooperstown, New York. And I'm really, really thankful I've been in a community that I could be a part of and be active in. I've also been a part of the Dewey House for Civic Engagement, which is a residential learning community here on campus where you're required to do 80 hours of service. And through that service, I've really been able to connect with the people of Burlington and develop a very deep concern for what they care about and what they want done. And early on in my senior year, I've really come to see the connection between community service and public service, and that's why I'm running today. I've been so happy to see the volunteers that have come out, and I think I've been happy to go door to door and hear people and their concerns, and one of them is student and non-student relations, and I think that we have a real opportunity with this seat to work on that, and
We're gonna talk about that more. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna cut you off. Oh, no, I was just, okay, yeah. So we're gonna start with questions now. We're gonna talk about all the things that they mentioned in their intros more, I promise, so I'm sorry to cut all of you off, but we can get started with questions.
All right, and to begin, I kind of want to start with a question that relates directly to students in the Burlington community. Excuse me. Considering past student-community relations and the nature of the new org being heavily comprised of student residents, what past methods and actions do you believe have failed to improve those relations, and what would you do differently as a city councilor to improve such relations? And we're going to start with Sharon.
You have to turn it on.
Right, thank you. So I think that we've come a long way, actually, as I said, with the orientation, the beginning of the community coalition. What I feel needs to go further is that if you're familiar with the initiatives of the community coalition, they're really localized and focused on specific streets and not so much the global problems that occur throughout neighborhoods in the city. So I think that what I would try to do is to continue to engage the students that live in the neighborhood streets to become either student ambassadors or to continue to reach out to neighbors. I think that we've got the foundation. I don't feel that I have any new initiatives to add to the foundation, but they need to be expanded. So as I'm thinking about this, I guess really the expansion of focused initiatives and problem areas, and all of you really reaching out to your peers. People don't respond to people my age, but they do respond to people of the same age with asking them to understand that they're now in a mixed, in a diverse neighborhood, and not everyone has the same lifestyle. So I guess that's really what I'd say, is more expansion of targeted approaches that are currently in existence.
Now go to Carmen.
Sure. I think that there has been some work done, and I think that, as Sharon said, we do need to expand on that. My attachment to this community really stemmed from the service that I did within it, and I think that if we can create that type of bond with the students and their downtown community, it can be a real asset. So I believe that a program in which students can take part in before they start their 4 years here, where they do service directly in their communities with neighbors who are willing to participate and create a tangible bond that they can physically see, a representation of the work they've done with their neighbors in the downtown community, could be really useful in helping those relationships and making students and residents get along and connect directly to their community. There's been some great initiatives on Isham Street with the garden, and I think that's a great step, and I support that fully. I think we can go further and, like I said, directly connect students to their neighborhoods, to the downtown, to the people there through service, I think is one way we can really help with those tensions.
Okay, got it. Okay, so thanks. That's a great question. And your question I took to be two parts, kind of what hasn't worked and what should we be doing differently going forward. So I also really appreciate the work of the community coalition and things like the community garden project on Isham Street, but I feel like they've been very focused on individual streets and haven't necessarily engaged students directly in policy making. Students aren't really around the table for some of those decisions. So that's something I think I would like to do differently, especially around student housing. I spent the last year on a committee that was looking at housing and looked a lot at student housing, and there were no students around the table. So I am really committed to changing that. That was direct feedback I gave on the city's housing action plan, that we should stop pretending that we know what students want and start talking to people about what new kinds of housing will work for students. I also think we need a more data-driven approach to dealing with some of the kind of problems and tensions between students and long-term residents. So I'm encouraged by new approaches that target problem houses instead of targeting all students, that target, I make follow-up calls on noise complaints to try to help landlords work with tenants to keep places where there's recurring noise down rather than just targeting all students about noise.
That would have brought Adam.
Sweet. Thank you. So what hasn't worked? I think that there hasn't been a student on the city council representing students, that is why we haven't made any progress. And that is why I decided to run. I started attending NPA, Neighborhood Planning Assembly meetings last year, and I realized there was a true communication breakdown between students, long-term Burlingtonians, and the city. And I want to be the representative to represent those interests in an unbiased and transparent way. I think that the issues that Selena mentioned, affordable housing, landlord accountability, the quality of life issues, we will address those later, but it's more of a culture shift. By having a student on the city council, we will show to the long-term Burlingtonians that students do care. They aren't the only ones causing these noise violations. They do care, and the majority of them are not these people causing these violations. It also is symbolic, and it shows that to the students that their fellow peer is stepping up and really taking action so that we can create more of a community rather than a neighborhood. So I think that by having a student on the city council, by having my connections with the student as a student, I will make everyone more engaged and more caring and really make a solid, beautiful community.
Yeah. So can you guys hear me? Yeah. What I would say, what has failed. I think that failure is a very strong word, and I don't think it's appropriate here. Nor would I say that we, like Brock just mentioned, I'm sorry for coming at you, but that we've made no progress. I think that is an insult, not to make it too hard, but an insult to a few folks, both at the university and in the community who have been working on these issues for a very long time. Is it perfect? Of course not. We know what the issues are. And there's no discussion around that, but to say there's no progress has been done is a little bit out there as far as I'm concerned. What I would want to do, and we'll talk about housing and there's all these different issues, something that I would want to champion on my own, on top of collaborating on these types of things, is really taking ownership and be a champion on drug and alcohol use in our communities, both for students and for non-students, because it's prevalent in both communities. What I would want to do is through my organization that I've built throughout this campaign of students and residents, is champion an awareness and an information program that would pretty much inform anybody who has a drug overdose or an alcohol overdose or a sexual assault happen, that you all and we all know exactly who to call, when to call, because it's always better to make that call and be safe than to not and save yourself from a section.
Mine works. Thank you for your answers. Now we want to move to questions directly having to do with off-campus housing for students. And the first question is, how do you specifically plan on addressing landlord accountability and high rents? And we're going to start off with Adam.
There we go. So yeah, landlord accountability. I think that high rents, so affordability is one aspect of that, and I'll address that, but I think what's really important is to recognize that we can access a lot of these problems that we're going to be talking about, not just affordability, but quality as well, and clean streets and quiet streets. We can address all of these things by developing systems and relationships with landlords, as a partner with landlords in that community, to really address all of these issues. So I guess I'll use affordability as a one way there, and that's challenging because you can't tell a landlord, we don't have enough power as city councilors to say, lower the rent for these people. But what we can do is create systems that keep them accountable, and we can discuss and help facilitate new housing opportunities, both that are in the pipeline and that are yet to be in the pipeline, to get enough housing where once added into the market, you all and myself included will have more options, which will then of course lower the cost that landlords can charge. The problem we have right now with affordability is that we don't have any options. The options are usually you have 3 rooms, all that are dumps, all that cost $800 a month, and pick one. But what we need to do is insert quality housing in the marketplace to a degree that the market will then shift, so we can have some more affordable housing. That's how you do it.
Awesome. So I think that the term landlord accountability is floated around a lot, but I really want to make it a reality. And that's why I've met with numerous people on both sides. So I've met with landlords, I've met with property managers, I met with Bill Ward, the Director of Code Enforcement, to really talk about this issue and get all opinions so that we can really come to an effective solution. I think that my firsthand experience with landlord accountability has been huge. That's one of the reasons why I got in touch with Bill Ward at the beginning. That's one of the reasons why I first started attending my neighborhood planning assembly meetings. So as a mathematics and economics dual major, I think that leveraging technology and data to create a portal, just like the open database portal with the mayor. If we do that, we can relieve work off the code enforcement, off of city officials, so that they have more time to do more efficient work. And by using that, we can create more ideas, such as my previous idea of creating an app that uses the rating systems proposal that Bill Ward came up with, 1 to 5 tier of the certificate of occupancy of whether they've been updated is huge. Also, my idea to create a new pilot program at GMNANCE, working with the UVM administration, so that can be a better place, attractive to juniors and seniors downtown, really prove to be a pilot for new development, because I've heard from a lot of residents that they don't just want a big development in the heart of downtown. They really want to test it and see how that would work with their residents. As well, I think the apps like Rent Rocket will track really the real cost of utilities and really give a lot more information to prospective tenants. So that's where we can solve the affordable housing and landlord accountability problem, by creating more information and making more transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. As far as affordable housing, this spans more than just off campus. I just want to let you know that I have urged the administration to provide more of a sliding scale for on-campus housing, because I know that's real. Affordable housing off campus, really, it's a matter of supply and demand, a lot of it, and we don't have enough housing. And so if indeed we have more housing, the price of the units will come down. So I don't want to dwell on that, but I think that's part of the solution. As far as landlord accountability, we've passed legislation now that really, so code goes in and inspects housing units. They look at whether or not they're safe for people to reside in. And there's going to be a system now where whether or not you cycle every 5 years if you have no violations, or whether you cycle every year. And that system will play out to everyone's advantage, because the landlords who own the properties that get cycled every year will be listed. So you'll know that those are not really good stewards for the houses that they own. And so that will, I believe, shift the responsibility and accountability for landlords. They won't want their name on that list. They want to rent these units to either you or some other resident in Burlington. So that is the way that we get landlord accountability. This has been a hard nut to crack. They have not been to the table. The students have, the residents have, the landlords haven't. And this is one step in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to Selena and then Carmen.
Thank you. So on the question of high rents, I mean, there is no doubt in my mind that we do need some development growth and some new housing. We have a 1% vacancy rate in Burlington, and it's really, really challenging. That said, I've worked on the mayor's housing action plan for the last year, and it is really focused on what's called market rate housing. So I've tried to be a strong voice for pushing for more affordable housing in the mix, a healthier mix of different kinds of individuals who can access some of that new development and growth. And I think we sometimes stereotype all students as being really, really wealthy. I've had a student last year who was homeless for a while because she couldn't afford housing. So you guys need affordable housing too, and I want to be a strong voice for that. Like Sharon, I co-sponsored the resolution for the tiered landlord ranking system along with a very tripartisan group of counselors. And I think that does have a lot of promise. I also first heard the idea for an app associated with making that data available about a year ago from Bill Ward, and I've also been sharing that idea with people out on the campaign trail. I think it's a really good one. I think there's some real entrepreneurial potential there for you guys to be able to input and access information about landlords, and it's a great idea that Bill Ward came up with.
Yeah, so I think with regards to landlord accountability, I'm sure that anyone in this room could sit up here and tell you a 20-minute long horror story about how difficult it is in Burlington with landlords. I think that we've emphasized the five-tier rating system for landlords, and that's an important first step in keeping them accountable. I also think we need to emphasize the See, Click, Fix app, which is available to also keep landlords accountable and allow students and residents alike to take pictures of what's going on in their homes, on the streets, and that all gets logged into a database that's open, and we can really track and make landlords more accountable that way. I think it's also important to note that people don't always know their rights as renters, and as students, I know I didn't know all of my rights, and knowing those can be really important in keeping landlords accountable as well. And I think that it's also important to note that since students aren't always aware of their rights and what's going on, bad landlords can take advantage because they know they have no other options for housing. And that's an issue too. You know, 44% of people's income here in Burlington goes towards housing, so we need to work on that. I think the UVM Master Housing Plan has some great parts, like the repurposing of Gene Mance and also Trinity Campus for grad students, because I've spoken to many grad students, and a lot of them have said there's no affordable place for them to live on campus or near campus, and I think the repurposing of Gene Mance and that Trinity dorm can be absolutely essential in creating those first steps to seeing if we can make student-sponsored or university-sponsored housing attractive to students.
Sticking with the topic of housing, as you all know, the City Council passed an ordinance recently that limits the number of non-family members to 4 on a lease. And I was wondering if you think that is fair to students and whether it targets them. And we'll start off with Selena and then go to Carmen.
Thank you. And just to be clear, that's an ordinance that's gone through many iterations over several years, so it's actually been on the books in different forms for quite a while. And I think it is designed to address a situation where there's a landlord renting, you know, what would be more comfortably a 4 or 5 person rental to many individuals. I know that I have a lot of constituents who are pretty invested in that ordinance, so I'm not committed to making it disappear. That said, I don't see that as really a magic bullet for solving quality of life issues in our neighborhoods the way some people do. I see, like I said, that data-driven approach, right? I mean, there could be 5 or 6 people living in a house that's really quiet and respectful, and there could be 3 people living next door in a house that's really noisy and, disrespectful to neighbors. And so I'm committed to kind of continuing to investigate sort of the legality of how that ordinance is enforced. The reality is actually there's a lot of properties that are grandfathered, so there are many places where it's fine to live with like 8 people in a unit. But yeah, my approach is more to really target parking issues, noise issues, the actual behaviors that are causing challenges in the neighborhoods and tensions between long-term residents and students.
Yeah, residents in my neighborhood, I live up on East Ave, and I have heard a little bit about the unrelated 4 from them. And I think, it also centers back to education. Students don't know anything about it. At least I didn't myself coming to UVM as a student know that there was an unrelated 4. So I think it also goes back to landlord accountability and having students know that where they're living is a place they can live so they can make an informed decision about it as well. I can see where it can be a concern to residents, and I can see where students not being educated about it is not going to help the situation, move forward in a positive way. I think that I understand Selena's approach to attacking those root causes of neighborhood tensions, and I agree that that is a great way to move forward. You don't want the first time that you interact with your neighbors is because they're calling the cops on you about a noise ordinance and you're being too loud and they can't get to sleep. I think the first time you want to interact with your neighbors is when you're meeting them, going over to say hello, and being one of the wonderful students and community members that you are as an engaged person and a student at this university.
Now we'll go to Sharon.
Thank you. As Selena said, the 4 unrelated ordinance has been around for over 20 years, actually. And so the reason it was implemented there were multiple reasons, but one was the intensity of use of a property. A house can only support so many people. And so whether you're quiet or whether you're noisy, if you have too many people living in too small a living space, you're going to spill over. Your voices are going to spill over, your trash is going to spill over, your cars are going to spill over. So it's intensity of use of the property. That's one factor. The other factor is safety. So some landlords get creative because they want to rent bedrooms, as you all know. So the dining room becomes a bedroom, the attic, which wasn't really habitable living space, becomes 2 bedrooms. This is not a safe process, and there aren't enough bathrooms for people. So really that was part of the motivation. It wasn't targeted towards students as much as intensity of use for properties. I want to be really clear about that. There are things about the 4 unrelated, though, that you need to know. That if indeed you, as a group, operate as a functional family, in other words, you pay your bills together and you live together, you share expenses, you are a functional family, you can qualify more people can qualify to live in that space. So I want you to know that also. And I guess I'm going to have to stop because I see the hand up, but I have a lot of information on this. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more with Sharon. I think that the intensity of housing is really important and the safety issues is very important. And I've talked to Bill Ward and landlords about this. When students have, a couple days that they have off from break and they live on campus and they want to stay at a friend's house downtown, I'm perfectly fine with that. But I think they should be looked at it by case-by-case basis, using data, like Selena mentioned, using these apps like See, Click, Fix, and other innovative technology will really help this situation. But I also think it goes back to the housing problem. If we're having too many people housed in one place, it obviously means that we need to create more housing and create more opportunities. And that is why one of my ideas, talking with a separate landlord, is to create an ordinance in which we can have multi-unit homes and residences be transformed into condominiums where you can purchase one unit in that residential complex. So not only will that make it more affordable for young families to stay in Ward A, but it will make it an increase in housing, and by creating that ordinance, we can reinforce and re-inspect those places that are being redeveloped, and that will really help a lot of the situations. But I think that the safety issue is really big, but it really should be using data to really drive this. And I don't think it's just targeted to students. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. For me, we know what this issue is. I don't think it was formulated to target students when it was introduced 20 plus years ago. I do think that it intends now, it's kind of reformed into being something that could potentially fix student issues, and I don't agree with that. I was at SGA and somebody asked me a similar question to this, and I said, okay, the foreign related rule as it is says if the four folks unrelated, they can't live in the same house. Well, raise your hand if you live in a property that has more than 4 people, and 3/4 to 80% of the folks raise their hand, and I'm sure it's similar here tonight. What I would say is that the issue with this piece of policy is that for landlords that have been grandfathered in, it actually de-incentivizes them to upkeep their property. There's a certain, I would actually pose it as a question, I'll do it later to some folks with some experience. You know, to a certain degree, you can't update a property without creating it under a new ordinance. So for them, they're actually decentralized because they'll have to, the landlord will have to re-register the property and kick out essentially some of its rent payers. So the foreign related, it's not effective. In fact, it is inhibiting, as far as I'm concerned, or de-incentivizing landlords to upkeep their property.
Thank you. Now we're going to switch the focus to transportation. On Monday, February 9th, the City Council unanimously passed the creation of a walk-bike master plan process and committees. If elected, how would you work to ensure that transportation from the UVM campus to downtown residential neighborhoods is a priority? We're going to start with Brock and then move on to Adam.
Thank you. That meeting actually made a lot of progress, and I was at that meeting participating in the discussion. So I think it's really important to emphasize my dedication to this cause. You know, I've attended consistently City Council and MPA meetings, and that just shows one part of my dedication. But I'm from a place, Ithaca, New York, where we have the same sort of crazy one-way and non-bike and pedestrian-friendly place to be. And what they did is similar to what Nella's been working on, giving a survey to the candidates and really asking them, how would you pursue this? And I think, you know, I don't own a car, I bike, I rollerblade, I skateboard, I do everything, you know, bike and pedestrian friendly. So I think it's so critical. And what I would do is really hear from the public how they can do it. Test pilot projects like Max Tracy, City Councilor Tracy implemented. So by testing these pilot projects downtown, we can see the efficiencies in the system, and this will not only relieve traffic and parking problems, but it will really make Burlington more bike and pedestrian friendly, something that we're very, very proud of.
Yeah, so for me, transportation is pretty simple. I think it's about effectively getting folks from point A to point B and creating space for walkability and bikeability, but it's really about safety. For me, I really come at this from a safety aspect, saying, you know, let's build streets with a zero tolerance fatality. You know, identifying from, you know, let's have no fatalities on our streets. Let's be creative and effective with how we're going to build our streets over the next 3, 6, 9 years. Talking in terms of terms here. You know, what I think I would want to do, and I think transportation, I don't think we're going to get a lot of contentious ideas. Really be working with folks like Our Streets, like Brock mentioned, on really fostering these policies. What I would say is this would be something that I would want to champion personally. You can't do everything that we're talking about up here in just 3 or 2 years. I would want to, like I talked about drug and alcohol, have transportation, walkability, and bikeability was something that I would champion and bring up, because I think that we can have some real improvements be seen in just one term of 3 years.
Thank you. So for me, transportation is really, you know, as we said, multimodal. The intersection of Prospect, Pearl, and Colchester Avenue, which I believe if any of you cross, and I imagine a number of you do, is a lot safer. That was a result of a study that was done by the Ward 1 NPA that then expanded to regional planning. And so the goal is to have it safe for bicyclists, pedestrians and vehicles. And I think we've made vast improvements. And you know, it didn't take a transportation expert. It took a resident who lived in Ward 1 to come up with this approach that we have currently. So put on your thinking caps. I want a city that's accessible. I want sidewalks to be accessible, whether you are an avid runner or walker, whether you have a wheelchair, whether you have a child in a stroller. I want accessibility. Linkage is also really important. Linking the university to the downtown. Safe walkways that are well lit. Internal walkways in campus also. I know you've got a master plan that looks at that also. I haven't seen the final design, but I know there was a plan in place. So for me, that's also important. We have an old city. Some of our streets we can easily accommodate a bike path and a pedestrian way. Other areas are really a challenge. Those are the ones that we all have to work together to try to figure out how we make your access on a bike, or mainly on a bike, because sidewalks are mainly in place there, how you're going to be safe. And some of those sidewalks you can't expand to be a combined bike pedestrian way. So I'm committed to it, have some ideas, but I could use your help too. Thank you.
Now we're going to move to Carmen and then Selena for their answers.
So when we talk about transportation, I really think it's threefold. I think we have bike transportation, we have public transportation, and we have the sidewalks. With regards to bikes, 6% of vehicle trips are now happening by bikes, and that shows the dedication that the city has to using that as a method of transportation. So I think that we need to make sure that the new roads that are being built include a bike path that's protected and safe for people with all biking levels, intermediate, advanced, and myself who can't ride one without falling over. With public transportation, that's CCTA, and I think that there are a lot of students that use that coming to school and coming uptown from, the bottom of the hill. And I've heard a lot of people that miss Blurp It, may it rest in peace, because that was really effective for student transportation. And a lot of people would like to bring that back. And I see putting GPS trackers on our city buses could be a good idea as well. With sidewalks, there's been an 82% increase in sidewalk funding from the mayor, and I think that's a great step. We want to make sure they're safe for people on all walks of life as well, and they're dangerous, and that's hard for people with wheelchairs, like Sharon said, parents with strollers, and students walking home at night. So, yeah.
Thank you. So I was, again, a very proud co-sponsor of the Bike Ped Master Plan resolution that Councilor Tracy brought forward. And what that does differently is it looks at the whole picture of bike and walk infrastructure in our city and asks us to think about fully functioning routes throughout the city for those modalities, whereas in the past we've approached things kind of piecemeal, a few blocks at a time, a part of a street at a time. So I think that's really important. I've spent a lot of the last year starting to dig in on and get my head around bike and walk safety issues. I've been approached by a number of constituents who have been victims of bike accidents and have been pretty frustrated with their experience. So I asked the Public Safety Committee that I'm a member of to take a look at that. We've devoted a full meeting to it, and that's going to be really the focus of our work moving into the next year. So it's one of the things I'm really hopeful to come back and keep working on. I do think, I also voted to retain language around rapid demonstration projects so that we can start to make more nimble decisions around what works in our city as part of that bike ped master plan. And then I do think the public transportation system is huge. It really needs to be more robust and more expanded. And the city doesn't run that. That's something, like Carmen said, called CCTA. So the city needs to be a strong advocate kind of at the regional planning level to think about how that can realistically expand and serve our needs.
Thank you for those answers. Now another transportation question. During the February 10th mayoral debate, current Mayor Moreau spoke about the Cherry Street bus stop and how it's not adequate and there needs to be a multimodal transportation hub in downtown Burlington. Do you agree that a new transportation hub is necessary? And if so, where do you imagine this hub and what would it include? And we're going to start with Selena, then Carmen.
Thank you. So I wasn't at that debate. I was probably out knocking on doors that night. So I feel like I'm lacking a little bit of context on this question. But we have approved as City Council moving forward with a new downtown hub for CCTA, which is the bus system that would replace the current Cherry Street hub. And I think we're all really enthusiastic about that and see a lot of potential there. In terms of more multimodal improvements to our downtown core, there's definitely some potential with the Burlington Town Center development to open up some streets and some pathways and some connectivity to other parts of the city, and also to free up some streets that don't have full vehicular access now, that could then create those more fully functioning bike lanes on streets like North and South Winooski Street. And yeah, and also the walk bike master plan, again, sort of really maps out the role, will give us a real opportunity to map out the role of the downtown in functioning more adequately as that transportation hub. I think also to make you're not giving me the hand yet. So I think to make the downtown be a true transportation hub, we need a downtown that's accessible to everyone. So that means we need to actually push back a little bit on the mayor's housing plan that really does emphasize largely market rate housing downtown, and make sure that all kinds of people can live and work and walk and commute from downtown. Thank you.
So with regards to what kind of location would be good for a multimodal hub, I think that Cherry Street is a good place to have that. And what I would like to see in that kind of transportation space is something that is well lit. First of all, I know that there's a lot of students and everyone else who's down there late at night, and it's, I've been there, it's scary. And as a young person or as an old person, I think we need to work on making sure that anything that gets built includes lighting that is helpful and make sure that you feel safe and protected at all hours of the night. I also think that in making these multimodal transportation units, we need to include some kind of enclosed shelter, because it is freezing in these winters and it's difficult, and we want to make sure, again, people feel safe and enclosed and they're protected when they're outside. Like Selena said, the Burlington Town Center does open up a lot of potential for connectivity in our streets, and that's a complaint that a lot of people have brought forward with the town mall as it is. So I really think those two things, enclosed structures and lighting for everyone, are some good places to start.
Thanks. Now we're going to move on to Sharon, then Brock, then Adam.
Thank you. I supported the proposal for the new CCTA center. We pay, as a community, we pay a tax to CCTA, so some of this upgrade is being done by them, and the city is contributing a small amount to actually make it appear better, to address some of the issues that I just heard, which had to do with lighting and some protection from the weather. So we had a vision also that we wanted to put forward, and so we contributed some modest amount of money to make that happen. It's absolutely essential. I think that riders sometimes get treated like second-class citizens, and I think that it was somewhat disgraceful where people had to wait for, where they currently have to wait for buses. And so we really needed to do something like this. A lot has been said, which I was going to say, but I don't know if you'd like to have it repeated, but I think that the mall, the renovations, the proposed renovations to the mall really give us an opportunity to really expand on the connectivity and to open up our downtown so that people can actually move about it more. Right now, it's almost like a maze. There are just big obstacles. The mall is an obstacle, and you have to go around it. And so there's the potential to go through it, and that will be good. And my hand's up. Thank you.
Thank you. I support the plan to create a multimodal hub. When I'm not carpooling with my boss, as I work at the State House Capitol, I'm taking the bus. And I am one of those riders that sometimes feels like a second-class citizen. So I think it's huge. I don't think that the hub should be extravagant. I think it should do its duty. It should definitely have protection from weather. It should definitely have proper lighting. But I think it should really be multimodal in every definition. So pairing it with a car share station, pairing it with an electric vehicle station, and working with these other types of transportation and not just bikes and buses and pedestrian walkways. I also think that Carmen's idea, creating a blur pit system through CCTA, would be huge. And it's really not that expensive. When we have this new Chief Innovation Officer filled, we will be able to see these efficiencies in our regional models to really create and see where riders are going and where we need to create a new system of bus stops and other multimodal places. So I think it's really important to really look at the data, going back to that again. But this multimodal is not just a word, it really is a lifestyle that Burlingtonians really embrace. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really tough going last on these questions because you don't want to repeat yourself. But I would reiterate a couple of things here. Does it need to be? Does the new hub need to be safe? Of course, well lit. I think that's a great point. Is it disgraceful where we make some of our residents wait for buses? Of course, we need to address that. What I would say about this and how I would and this will be an indication as to how I'd like to serve as city councilor, is let's think creatively about what other ways we can be dealing with issues through something like a transportation hub. One of the questions that I'd like to pose, that I would pose, would be show me some data and let's see some research on what kind of ways a new transportation hub can positively impact our social economy. So in what ways can we better get folks to work and from work? In what ways, what jobs will be created? What I would want to see in this and any other type of plan is what kind of economic benefit will it have and what kind of social benefit will it have? I think they're both very important. I think that's the way that I would approach this and other topics of debate.
Thank you. About a year ago, President Sullivan, President of the University of Vermont, charged the UVM community with addressing substance use on campus with the President's Committee on Alcohol and Other Drugs. One issue specifically focused on by the committee was the effective use with the Burlington community and how UVM may be able to work with different community outlets to address any situations that there may be. And do you think that substance use by UVM students is an issue to the community, and what do you think potential next steps could be to remedy potential issues? And we're going to start with Adam on this one.
All right, you go first. I'd start by challenging the question. I'd start by challenging the question and saying that students are something separate from the greater Burlington community. Part of what I want to start from, what I stand for, and what I want to help create and help cultivate is a community that there are no real, there are different cohorts and different stakeholders, but not in different communities. I think that would be the first part of my question. I think that the second part of my question would address what better ways can the city work with, work with the university and its students. I think that the university has been doing so much work over the last really 15, 20 years where rates and alcohol and drug issues have dropped by 30 to 50%. I was talking with Annie Stevens this last week about those numbers, and I was looking back at the time when I was at UVM, and those numbers were so much higher. So again, these issues can be addressed in a short amount of time, which I think is great. I think we need to capitalize on that timeline. And I think the last thing I would say is say, I think that this is already happening. I think that what you need to do in this type of situation is not to reinvent the wheel, but to become a spoke to make the wheel stronger. I think that would be a terrible metaphor.
Thank you. So I was present at the SGA presentation about the substance and alcohol and other drugs. So I have the data background, but knocking on doors, talking to residents, or talking to long-term Burlingtonians and students, I realized the scope of the problem. And I think that traditionally, enforcement is not really the only key. I think that we need more education surrounding substance, alcohol, and other drugs, because it's really important for students to know, what that's doing, what the repercussions are. So by creating more education, we'll have more awareness. and that will help the problem as well. But by looking at the youth substance abuse within the Chittenden County, they're doing great work. They have great interns, great case managers that really help out students having these problems. And like Adam said, it's not just students, it's also long-term Burlingtonians having these problems. So we have to look at it in a broader lens and really work with the city because UVM shouldn't have to deal with all of the problems. It should be the city as well. And so by creating these partnerships, by really instigating cooperation, we can really solve this problem in a twofold way rather than just focus singly.
So I'm not totally aware of your policy, I have to be honest, with what was rolled out. As far as alcohol abuse in the student population and in the population in general, I will let you know I was married to an alcoholic. So I know the Jekyll and Hyde of life. Very different personalities. Some people are nice drunks and other people are not so nice drunks. But people's personalities change. And so that does impact who you live with, who your neighbors are, and it is the root of most of the problems that we have. A lot of our town-bound problems are as a result of some of this type of behavior problem that we share. I totally agree with the first two speakers saying that it's not just a student problem. As I said, my husband wasn't a student at the time. He was an adult, and he was in his 30s. So what to do about it? I think that awareness and education certainly it seems like a never-ending solution, but it really is necessary because you need to continue to have that dialogue with people. Because at some point, people that are either binge drinking or people that are on the cusp of becoming alcoholics will get that message that maybe they want to turn their life around. You can't force a change in people, but you can help make them aware and you can get them the help and the support that they need. That's what people need that are walking that fine line is help and support. Thank you.
I was really encouraged as a member of the university community to see the task force that got formed over the last year. I've often felt working here that kind of treatment options and just resources broadly for my students and for students I might be working with in the library around substance abuse issues have felt more invisible to me than I think is healthy. So I'm really encouraged by this task force, but I also think we have to make sure as members of the university community that it's not just a checkbox for this administration. So substance abuse, I will just echo what everyone has said. This is not an issue that is unique to students. I was on Beale Street this weekend and I saw someone dangerously drunk at like 3:30 in the afternoon, like borderline ER drunk. And it was just heartbreaking. And I have no idea if that person was a student or not, So I think we need to look at what kind of resources are available to people holistically, and there should be a lot of partnering with the city and UVM as the findings of this task force come forward. I'll also say, as a city councilor, I've done a lot of work on opiate addiction and its community impacts over the last year. Oh, okay. I'll wait for the opioid question. So much to say.
Yeah, just to echo what everyone else has said, these substance abuse issues, they don't discriminate. It affects people of all kinds of demographics, and education is key. In a lot of these issues and situations, it's about situational factors and it's about attacking root causes, and education might be the only chance that some people have to learn about the effects of substance abuse and alcohol and drugs. And I think that the nonprofit work is essential. The Burlington Partnership for a Healthier Community does a great job of advocacy and education. I also think on campus it's really important to emphasize CAPS. We have a counseling and psychiatry service here that's free to students, and I think that's wonderful and something that should be used by people because it is free and it's available to us. And I want to make sure that people know that seeking help with these issues isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength, and it should be, commended. And I think that's really important too. I also just want to make sure in this community we continue to support people with substance abuse issues, and they're not treated like criminals, they're treated like people who have a disease that they're suffering from.
And staying on a similar topic, the relationship between heroin and the state of Vermont has received a lot of national attention, including articles in USA Today, Politico, CNN, and the Rolling Stone. And specifically, Chittenden County has been cited as a major problem area for heroin use. And I just wanted to hear your take on what you think the role of the city councilor should be in not only changing the perception about Vermont as being one of the heroin capitals of the country, but how to actually address the problem within the Burlington community. And we will start with Sharon.
I'm just thinking about the role that the city council plays in this. I guess what I'm going to tell you is that the role that we can play is to give support and funding to the resources necessary to deal with the problem. I directly will not be someone who can solve it, but I know that the police department and the programs that help people who have opiate addiction are the ones that we can fund and we can support. We can get people the help that they need. I think that, a lot of work goes into trying to keep the substance out of Vermont, but I'm not so sure that that's the solution. I think that you really need to figure out, once again, it's the same issue as any substance abuse. You need to give support to the people. You need to fundamentally understand their addiction and then try to help them wean off that addiction. So once again, mainly the role of the council, I believe, is financial, to support the agencies that work with this. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that as the city didn't hire lobbyists this year to represent Burlington, it's huge that we represent our interest in Montpelier at the Capitol. And I already have relationships with our representatives from Chittenden County because most of that funding, like Sharon said, is probably going to come from the Capitol and probably going to come from the state. So when we have these relationships already made, we won't have a transition process. We will already be able to work on these issues. I also agree with Sharon in that it's an education and awareness issue. We really need to put some more support onto who and what organizations are actually doing great work. And that's why I think this is a perfect example of why we should have results-based funding. We should use that data, like I keep on mentioning, to really see what works and what doesn't in this substance abuse problem. So I think that nonprofits have been huge with this. Organizations like churches and other places that are home and that will give support to these people is huge, and we need to support them. So it really goes back to the education and results-based funding, so we can really get progress on this problem.
I would agree that this is a problem that needs to be addressed from the top down with bottom-up support. So I really do think that the role of the city council and what the city council can do is support, like someone said, the police and the nonprofits and different community organizations that would do that. Like I said earlier, one of the things that I do want to champion, one of the three things that I do want to champion is drug and alcohol abuse. That is not just marijuana or prescriptions, that is heroin as well. I think that from a grassroots organizing capacity, whoever is to represent Ward 8 has a great opportunity in organizing folks like yourself and using students as a resource to start spreading that awareness, not only to fellow students, but like we've been talking about, to residents citywide in and outside of our ward. I had a really interesting and thought-provoking experience over last weekend where I went on a ride-along with a Burlington police officer, and they only let you say a certain amount of time throughout the night, but this lady, this officer who asked me not to use her name in public, dealt with a lot of drug issues. She dealt with a lot of mental health issues that have coincided with that issue, so I think we need to address that as well. They're not mutually exclusive. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a bottom-up support from a solution that I think policy-wise is going to come from the top down.
So I think, again, it's important to note that this is a deeply rooted issue, and I appreciate the focus on this opiate addiction that has been happening statewide, and Shumlin's efforts as well. I think that it's really important to note the use of the drug naloxone, which I'm probably mispronouncing. I got it? Great. And I think that it's really that's a drug that helps when people have overdosed on heroin, and I think it's important that our police officers locally know how that drug works and know how to administer it. And I think that support comes, like my fellow candidates have mentioned before, in two forms: in the form of education and in the form of resources. So we want to make sure there is education around this drug, which is incredibly, incredibly addicting. Making sure people know that at a young age is a really good way that we can combat that, and making sure that these programs are supported financially and the interests of the people that are suffering from this addiction are being represented, in the city and at the statewide level.
Thank you. So I do think there are things we can do at the level of city councilors on this issue, and I will tell you 4 things that I've done over the last year. So we know that for the first time, I think in 2013, treatment for opiate addiction in our state actually surpassed treatment for alcoholism, which is huge. So 4 things, hard to do in 90 seconds. So I chaired a working group that was a joint project of the Burlington Board of Health and the Public Safety Committee that looked at the issue of needle disposal. So we actually are going to pilot this spring a Dropbox program at a number of sites throughout the city. We were hearing reports of discarded needles, really unsafe throughout the city. I've been working really collaboratively with the mayor and his team around the issue of expanding access to naloxone, like Carmen mentioned, which is a drug that can actually reverse an overdose. Currently, our Burlington Police Department doesn't carry naloxone, and I've made a really strong case for that to change, and I think it is going to change as a result. I've also reached out to the UVM campus police about carrying naloxone as well, and they were really receptive to that idea. I've asked the mayor and his team to advocate for an expanded role for nurse practitioners in our treatment hub and spoke system in their work in the State House as kind of lobbyists for the city, and they've also been very receptive to that. And then finally, I'll be requesting discretionary funding for Safe Recovery, which is an amazing needle exchange and harm reduction program that is doing incredible work in Burlington and in Chittenden County with people who are struggling with this addiction, and their funding is going to be imperiled. So I'm going to be asking the city to step up and give at least a little bit to help them do that important work moving forward.
And now I want to move on to a few ballot initiatives regarding non-citizen residents. And currently, as the charters state, in order to serve on city boards and in departments, you must be a legal resident of the United States in order to participate in, as well as voting. And I just wanted to hear whether you all agree or disagree with changes in the language that would amend those to mean that people who are here legally, who may not be citizens but are residents of Burlington, can participate in things like elections and service on boards and commissions. And I'll start with Adam and move to Brock.
Yeah, this issue is something that is simple for me. I usually overcomplicate things. For this, I am simplifying it. If there is a community member who lives in my community who is a participant, who is a healthy and contributing member of my neighborhood and my community, I see no reason why that person should not have a say in a vote for for their selves, their livelihood, their kids, their futures. I've talked to so many, and I know so many more of fully engaged and participating members of our community who right now don't have the capacity to have their voice heard. And at a local level, someone who's very passionate about local politics, I am 100% in favor of giving those folks the opportunity to be heard.
So I've heard a lot of opinions of this. My grandpa George emigrated from the Czech Republic during the Nazi occupation. So this really hits home for me. I think that on one side, citizenship is something that we should strive for. These residents should really work hard on that. But the system right now, it could take 10 years to gain citizenship. So if these members of our community are participating in local government, if they are supporting our tax base by paying their local and city taxes, they should have that. They should have that right to vote in what decides, especially if they have children. But I think that the view that maybe they should have a residency requirement could be something, but I don't know what the term limit could be. So I think that as Jason mentioned, it is a ballot initiative. So what the public decides on March 3rd, I will completely support, as I am their true representative.
I co-sponsored the resolution on non-citizen voting, and also support non-citizens being able to serve on boards and commissions. I think Brock articulated really well that it could take a long path to citizenship. I just was talking to someone who was on that path when I was knocking on doors the other day, and they were so grateful that this was coming forward. I also think, depending on your country of origin, not every country has dual citizenship, and you may have to give up a lot of rights in your homeland to become a citizen here. So there's sometimes reasons beyond what we immediately see not to do that. I think this is a basic issue of increasing civic engagement. I mean, we've had historically low turnout in our in some of our recent elections, and just be clear, we're just talking about municipal voting, so we're just talking about city voting here. I absolutely support someone being able to vote on who represents them on the school board, on what the school budget is at the school their kid attends. It will be a long path if non-citizen voting passes, just to be clear, because it does require a change to the state constitution. So the next step will be to then take that to the state house, where I hope we'll be strong advocates as a city for moving forward.
So I think that the right to vote and the right to serve on these boards is really incredible, and I think that people who are engaged in this community and live here should be afforded that right and should be able to participate in an active way. Like Selena said, I think that it's important to note that it's a state constitution and it might take a long time, but I think it's something that's really essential to the people that live here and have made Burlington their home, and I just don't want to be super repetitive, but I support it. I support the bill going through, and I think that it's going to come down to what the people of Burlington feel on that issue, and I'm excited to see the turnout on March 3rd with the voting, and I hope that it does pass.
So these are two separate initiatives, so just want to be really clear. One is that allows people that are non-residents to serve on boards and commissions. Now currently we have some commissions and boards that allow that right now, and others, our charter says it's not allowed. So this is a local issue. I hope people will entertain it. I very much support it, and that's within our control. We can propose it, it's a charter change, so although it's within our control, the state legislature has to pass it, but for the most part, if the residents of Burlington overwhelmingly support that, usually the legislature will go along with it. The other question is a lot different than that, and that's saying to give non-citizens the right to vote in local elections. And in my feedback from people, it's divided. Some people feel very strongly that if you make the commitment to come to the United States, that the right to vote, whether it's local or national, should be something that you attain by becoming a citizen. I don't necessarily share that view, but I do think that if this goes forward, there needs to be long and hard thoughts about how long you would have to live in the U.S. before you had access to it. So although I support it, I do want to see some details put in it that would better define what criteria needs to be met before you have that right. Thank you.
Hi, on to one of our final questions, which has to do with Burlington's downtown tax increment financing. Another one of the ballot questions reads that this is a pledge to credit of the city to secure indebtedness or make direct payments for the purpose of improvements, including Main Street, St. Paul Street, and the marketplace upgrades and repairs. Do you support Burlington's downtown TIF district? Or do you think this could be done without, these improvements could be made without TIF money? And we're going to start with Carmen.
Thank you. So I see this TIF as being a way that we can bring forth improvements and have them be paid for, the economic improvements paid for by the improvements that this makes. I'm sorry, I am about to puke. I have a horrible stomach flu, so pardon my inability to speak at the moment. I think that the great thing about TIF is that it doesn't affect local tax rates, and it can be used primarily to improve the community without burdening the taxpayers. And I also think that voting yes to this could really help with some of the issues in our problem areas in the downtown.
Do you support the downtown TIF district? And then if not, do you think this could be done, these improvements could be done without TIF funding?
Well, the downtown TIF district just exists as a district, and but do I support this ballot item? I do. I definitely do. This is a way for us to use the TIF funding structure, which is way more complicated than anybody can explain in 90 seconds. Maybe Sharon can do it with her vast experience. But it leverages a tax funding structure and allows us to make improvements in our city's infrastructure. So a lot of the proposed improvements here are around sidewalks and streetscaping and road improvements that kind of leverage some of the development that's happening in our community. So I absolutely support being able to leverage that to reinvest in our downtown. Absolutely.
So I also support this proposal. The good thing about the TIF district is that we actually had authority for $20 million, and what's before you is a $10 million proposal. And the items were identified when the question was read, so I'm not going to waste time on that. What's really good about this is, and there was a very thorough review of this to make sure that actually what you do is you invest in the infrastructure, and then as development occurs, there's going to be, like, let's say there's a small house, and then you add on to that house so that your taxes will increase, so that additional new taxes will go to pay down the debt. So there's no tax, there's no impact to the residents unless your projection isn't realized. So ultimately, if indeed our conservative, and I believe it was conservative, is not realized, then the city is liable. So you need to be aware of that, but I believe that these improvements are really necessary. I think they will make us a better city, and I certainly support this, so thank you.
I certainly support the TIF district. Sharon mentioned how it works, but I'm going to briefly re-mention it. Pretty much what it is it's investing in our infrastructure so that creates a bigger tax base, and then we can pull from that at the same or similar tax rate. So at a time when most people are concerned about their taxes increasing, it's mostly due to actually school and pension costs and not necessarily municipal taxes. So I think that this is a great economic model for us to invest in our infrastructure, counting on the future and counting on Burlington becoming more active and really revolutionary. So I think that, as Sharon mentioned, these are very, very conservative measurements and estimates, and I've worked with the mayor's office and talked about this at length. So it'll really improve our downtown with no sort of tax change for the everyday Burlington. So, it's great. It's a great way. And TIF districts are only have a certain time limit. So I think that we should definitely enact this on March 3rd.
Yeah, I will save everybody time and just let you know that I also support it because it better leverages funds to improve our infrastructure, and my interest is essentially the same as everyone else's.
All right, I think we've heard a lot of agreement on many of the issues that we've talked about so far tonight. So I just wanted to hear, before we maybe move to questions from the audience or closing statements, what you feel differentiates you from other people that are also seeking your positions. And we'll start with Carmen.
So I think that as a student that's graduating in May, I'm currently making that transition from student to resident, and I think that puts me in a unique position to see the sides of the student population and the sides of the resident population and be able to represent those in a collaborative and productive way that's facilitated, with my heart and with the input of the student population and with the input of the resident population, because I'm becoming one, and I think that that's really important to note. I also think that I'm really honored and glad to receive the endorsement of the mayor, and I've been really, really glad to work with so many city councilors so far who have helped me along and will continue to do that, and I think that's what's important to note.
Thank you. So a couple things. One thing is, I think I have a lot of proven experience facilitating collaboration with all kinds of people. It's really the skill that I'm most proud of over the last year of my time on City Council. I've worked a lot with students to bring forward policy over the last year. It's something that's really part of my professional life here at UVM. I do outreach to students and make all kinds of improvements based on those results to our library system. And beyond working with students, I just really feel like that's the skill I'm most proud of, is I can just bring a lot of different viewpoints together around a table and find some areas of agreement and move some action forward. And it's something I've been doing for, decades of my life. I think the other thing that's really different is that I don't have the mayor's endorsement, and I feel like that puts me in a position where I can ask the mayor tough questions when he needs to be asked tough questions. I can ask him why there's not more affordable housing in his housing plan. I can ask him, why he's so hesitant to support divestment from fossil fuels in Burlington's public funds. I can ask him all kinds of questions. We asked him, why he was hedging on non-citizen voting earlier in the year, and I think that's a really important perspective. I think I'm going to be there to ask tough questions when you need me to on issues.
Yeah, I guess I'll speak from the heart on this. I don't see myself as a politician. I really don't. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Because I'm very close to the mic. You know, I said that I'd use this opportunity to speak from the heart and say that I don't see myself as a politician. I see myself as a person, and I would like to be elected as such. I think that what's important that I'd like to reiterate for those of you who don't know is that I chose to run as an independent. Of course, you know, everyone up here has relationships with existing leaderships and can facilitate collaborative efforts and all of these things that goes without saying. That's part of the work that we do as candidates. But what I wanted to do was run as an independent on the principle that I would be beholden to nobody except myself, my principals, and the folks that chose to put me in office.
Just still 1 minute and 30 seconds.
You can have 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. You know, obviously my opponent and I mostly agree on the issues facing Ward A. But I think what makes a clear distinction between him and I is my experience, my dedication, and my creativity. So while my opponent graduated from UVM 4 years ago, he immediately left and worked in Boston on campaigns. I am a current student studying mathematics and economics and gaining policy knowledge at the Capitol where I have these relationships. So with this multidisciplinary background, there's no question that I will stay here in Burlington no matter the outcome of the election. And as well, as Vice President of Standards and Finance on the Interfraternity Council, I represented about 10% of the student population. As a senator on the student government, I represented all students of the student body. My dedication is unrivaled compared to his. I've consistently attended neighborhood planning assembly meetings and city council meetings, while my opponent has only attended 2 NPA meetings and 0 city council meetings. I'm currently taking a leave of absence, like I said, to pursue a fellowship at Renewable Energy Vermont, committed to reducing Vermont's reliance on fossil fuels and going into clean, affordable energy. This gives me the policy knowledge, but it also affects what my work is doing right now, affects students and long-term Burlingtonians in Burlington as well. So if you watch the past few debates and keep attention at this, and you kept attention at this one, you will realize that my opponent has said championing, and he questions this, but he has provided no real ideas. I am a creative representative. I have brought forth these ideas that I have mentioned long before, and so working with this, I will devise creative solutions to our unique problems. And I also think, lastly, it is very important to note the different styles of campaigns that we are running. While he is focused on literature and social media, I have been talking person to person, and I think that really says a lot. This is a majority student ward, and I will be that student voice. Thank you.
So I am running in Ward 1 and I'm unopposed, so I can't differentiate myself from somebody else, but I can tell you a little more about myself. I am an independent, and I've always been an independent. I've worked with progressives, I've worked with Republicans, and I've worked with the Dems over the years, and all administrations. I was president of the City Council for 4 years, and under both progressive and a Republican mayor. I think my goal is, my most important entity is the city of Burlington and the residents that I represent. It's not about me, it's about you, and it's about the city of Burlington. I didn't grow up here, but I love it here, and I really care about it. I was the person who sponsored the Open Space Protection Plan. I really think breathability is important for Burlington. We're talking about tough issues here, but there's also about quality of life, and so Open Space Protection Plan. I also was supportive of and helped. We spent $50 million on cleaning up the lake. And so that was part of previous administrations, but certainly a role I played. I was on the Department of Public Works Commission before I was a city councilor. So environmental issues are near and dear to me. I look forward to whoever wins the elections, working with them. I think that, as an independent, there's no party of independence. We all have our own philosophy and platform. That's good and that's bad, because for all of you, you have to listen to what I have to say. You don't have a platform to identify me with. But I think, I'm trying to share with you who I am and what you can depend upon if I end up representing you or if you end up living in my ward. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to open up to audience questions. We don't have the best mics for this, so what I'm going to ask you to do is raise your hand, and I'll do my best he's got it. You can come up here and ask the question if that's okay. And then after audience questions, we'll give time for final statements. No, it's fine. Yeah, you can go.
Thank you very much for having this debate. I am not a UVM student, but I live on Green Street in Ward 2, which is a wonderful street. Unfortunately, we had a rough incident there. We had a homicide there. And obviously, public safety to me is a paramount issue in this campaign. And you know, if you go to UVM and you can't walk downtown or walk home or go out with a friend, then what fun is Burlington? I'm a big supporter of the police chief and the mayor, but I think we need to all work together. And you know, if you're not safe to walk around our, you know, we all love living here, then that's very distressing to me. And I think all the candidates have been very good tonight. So I'm glad. And again, I'd like to hear some thoughts on public safety. Thank you.
So we can start Carmen.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, obviously public safety is a huge concern here in Burlington. We do have a huge student population that is out, and they're out late at night. It scares me a lot of the times to think about people walking alone at night, and I know how dangerous that is, and I know how big of a concern that is to the student body and to the non-student body. I think that, you know, it starts with having safer streets, having better lighting, having sidewalks that are maintained well so that when you're walking home late at night, you're not looking down at your feet and you're looking at your surroundings as well. The blue light system on campus is doing a great thing. I think that that's helpful too. You know, ensuring that people know that walking with a buddy at night is safe, and making sure we educate about what's going on in our community is essential as well.
We'll switch it up a little bit and go to Adam next.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, public safety. Like I said earlier, very specifically. Very specifically earlier. You know, two of the three things that I really want to focus on very concretely public safety. The first being drug and alcohol abuse. My program that I will support and lead myself with students in permanent residence will deal with those issues around public safety and how they relate with drugs and mental health. And then the second that I mentioned very specifically earlier was the topic of transportation, and how, for me, transportation has everything to do with, of course, getting people effectively from point A to point B, but has to do with safety and supporting things like form-based code as the new zoning regulation for Burlington could be one in the several specific ways that I could do that.
Selena?
Thanks. So like I said earlier, I've been a member of the city's public safety committee, and thanks, Andrew, great question. Over the last year, so our focus there has really been on looking at kind of opiate and needle discard issues, and then starting to move into walk and bike safety, like I said, and I've been really proud to be kind of a leader of some of those initiatives. I'm also on the Parallel Justice Commission, which is an amazing body that works towards implementing systematic changes for victims of crime. And as you can imagine, there is a lot about sexual violence that we look at in that body, and it's really intense. So that's something I met earlier in the week with some students who are starting a new organization that relates to combating sexual violence on campus. I'd love to see more intense collaboration between the university and the city, not just the police force, but the city itself, on forming better, stronger partnerships to combat sexual violence. We have been looking a little bit at a blue light system potentially for the city, and not just UVM, which I think could be really great infrastructure for our bike path and some other areas. There's a little resistance. There's a little resistance right now to digging in too deep on it, but I think it's a really good question to take up. And I wish we had a lot more than 90 seconds to talk about public safety, because I agree, Andrew, it's a really big issue.
So as Selena stated, a fellow counselor, Vince Brennan, has been really a big advocate for the expansion of the blue light system in downtown Burlington. There has been a little bit of resistance, cost and how we would implement it and who would respond, but certainly I think that that is a real safety feature on campus, and I would like to see that expanded in some ways, maybe on the predominant walkways that students take to move from downtown up to back to campus. The other thing, an initiative that did take place, a resolution that the student body brought forward to Burlington, was that they looked at all the streets around campus and identified those that were not well lit. They also identified brush and overhang that could allow someone to hide behind and basically have that cleaned up. These are small steps, but they're important steps to make us safer. The other thing is common sense. I'm not a student, but I'm out late at night on the street too. Don't walk alone. That's really just, we all have to kind of take responsibility for our own safety, so don't walk alone. And I know that UVM does have, I can't remember from the Community Coalition, but I know that if you find yourself intoxicated or downtown and unable to get back to campus, I believe you have access to getting a free cab ride back. And I think, use that. Please use that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. I totally agree with Sharon. I think that cab ride home is really not known that well. So by creating this more education surrounding these utilities and these options so that we can be safer is critical. I agree with having better lit places, and we can make that an environmentally friendly initiative by putting solar panels on top of the lights. If we have proper sidewalks, that obviously helps. I think that as well, the quality of life enforcement has been great in its work, but from my personal experience, having an attempted break-in during our UVM holiday, we really need to have more communication with our police officers so that if they know we're out of town, we can let them know. We really need to be more personal with our police officers around our neighborhood so that we create these better relationships, and that just creates more caring. I also think that this goes back to the landlord accountability. If we have landlord accountability, there'll be more secure places, there'll be better locks, there'll be places where you really can't break in. And better infrastructure just means it's going to be a more safer place to live. So public safety, like Sharon said, is all about these little bits that we can help. And everything that we can do, if that helps one person walk home from night and makes them feel safer, I will champion that. Thank you.
So we have time for, I think, one more, and we've already got one, sorry.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. This was awesome watching it from there. This question is for Brock and Carmen. I know Carmen is a senior. Brock, what year are you?
Junior.
You're a junior? Okay, so your term is 3 years, yours is 2. How do you two plan on engaging students after your time at UVM, since you are a student campus right now?
I think that's a great question, and it comes up a lot. A lot of long-term Burlingtonians ask, are you really going to stay after these 3 years? And I think that my work already, my dedication already proves that. There should be no question that I'm staying, and it's just what work I will do after I am staying. So by creating, in my first year, by already having these current relationships rather than past experiences and relationships, I will really have already engaged the students. And by already working on the student government, I will know most of the student leaders and have relationships with them. So I think that using my previous relationships, using technology and social media to really get students engaged, and using other formats to make what I'm doing on City Council and what Burlington is doing on City Council more open and transparent to the students, because I think there's a lot of lack of information. Especially when I'm registering students to vote, they really don't know anything about it. They don't know that they can actually register to vote. They don't see any point in voting in Burlington politics, but these matters actually relate to students. And just like Bernie said last night, youth voting is really important. So when we get more students engaged, we get more creative opinions and more diverse solutions.
I made the decision to stay in Burlington really early in my senior year, and it's a place that I've made my home, and it's a place I want to stay, and it's a place that I'm continued to representing the students in, because I've tremendously enjoyed my time as a student, and I've appreciated getting to know so many people on this campus. I think through my involvement with the Dewey House for Community Engagement, I've made a lot of connections. I can use those to help be involved with the student population, and I'm really appreciative of those as well. I think that I want to make sure that students know that they're empowered, they know that they have a voice, they know that they're residents here, and they're a part of this community. And I think through engaging them in social media, through having productive forums, through direct contact, that all of that is possible, and that can be done, and we can make a community that includes the student voice and includes the resident voice in a very productive way.
And I'm going to open that up to the other candidates, I guess just rephrasing it with how do you plan on to engage students in the university?
I would continue what I've been doing for the last couple of months. My entire campaign team is built of current UVM students, and we are growing in network every day. As we speak, I know we are growing in network. And I think that, the things that, that they mentioned, the social media, that's all great, but I think, I think that it's important to engage students on an individual basis, based on commonalities, not based on whether or not they still go to school. Focusing on people for whether or not they're a good person, or whether or not they would be a good representative, or whether or not they would, they're contributing positively to your network. I think that's the way that we should judge each other. And I think that, yes, I would continue to engage current students through those methods, but for me, I look at students and anyone who is a non-student the same exact way, and I would engage with them both in the same fashion. I think that's the way I'd answer the question.
So I represent all of you, whether you're a student or not. The way I keep engaged with the student population is through my job, because people that are in a four-year program for clinical laboratory scientists actually come through blood bank. And so I interact with about 20 students in that way. Also, the way I make sure that I'm in tune with what's going on is not only hearing from you directly if I represent you, but by being a member of the Community Coalition. To me, that's really essential. I've been active in moving off-campus workshops since they began, trying to get the message out so that you, when you transition from campus to off-campus, that you find housing that's compatible for what you're looking for, and also safe housing. So my commitment to you is that if you're a resident of Ward 1, I represent you. I lived here as a student, I've lived here as a young professional, I've lived here as a parent of young people and now of grown people, and now I'm a senior citizen. So I've lived here in all capacities of my life, but I think I can relate to the issues that you face today, and I'm there for you. Thank you.
Thanks, and thanks for, I actually requested that we could open that question up a little bit to all the candidates, so I appreciate your willingness to do that. I do have existing relationships with students. One of the things that I think is incredible about UVM is how engaged students are in local and state and national issues. So even before becoming a city councilor, I've been working with students on climate action. I've been working with students on healthcare. I worked with students on a number of labor issues, including the CCTA bus strike and a livable wage proposal that I brought forward for Howard Center workers earlier this year. Students were instrumental in getting the city's fossil fuel divestment task force passed. There is no way that would have been passed without the testimony of students who I worked closely with to help build the case. And really the resolution itself was shaped by input from students. So I have those existing relationships. Like I said, I have a lot of my professional life involves facilitating discussions with students. But I also do have relationships with long-term residents. I've lived in many other cities in my life, but Burlington is my kind of consistent home. I did grow up here. I really know my neighbors. I can get you around the table with my neighbors to have meaningful discussion. I have the trust of a lot of long-term residents, and I can ensure that there's real dialogue that happens between students and long-term residents. Thank you.
And we have one more question, and then we're going to move on to final statements.
I guess my question is for you, Selena, and it's, what have you done in your time as a counselor for the students that live in Ward 1?
Good question. Well, I've definitely talked to students around bike safety issues and been advocates in like individual incidences where people were sharing details of accidents. But I think the biggest thing I've done is really insist on more of a student voice in our planning moving forward around student housing. That was really stood out to me by the end of my time looking at the city's housing action plan, where we had great representatives like Joe from UVM around the table. We had sometimes the mayor's team around the table. We had counselors, we had long-term residents. We had developers, private developers. We had affordable housing developers. We never had students really in the mix, I think maybe 2 times. And so I think some of the most important feedback I gave, and we'll see how it's received on the housing action plan, and what I'm committed to for sure moving forward is no more discussion about student housing solutions without students in the mix. I want to design charrette for students to really think about what would make desirable student housing. Had a great conversation with some students in a cooperative living environment earlier this week who actually really enjoy living on campus and wish there were more opportunities to live on campus in those kinds of settings. So I just think we need to start listening a lot better to students, and I've tried to be a voice for that. I've also tried to, the student I talked about, my student who was homeless for a while, I brought her story forward to a news reporter and really learned that that was not a very unique story actually, that a number of people have experienced that. So I've tried to really be a voice for the fact that students also need affordable housing. Not every student is going to be able to pay an exorbitant rent that their parent will just write a blank check for, and that's kind of...
I hate to interrupt.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
I'm going to move a question to Sharon, though,
Yeah.
because she is also
Yes.
our city councilor.
So, thank you. I've touched on some of these already. As far as bike safety, so what I try to do as a city councilor is I understand the issues that you face and then try to find collaboration between the city and the university. For bike safety, I went to the Community Coalition and tried to find a way where at the time that people come to campus freshman year, that there would be a booth or someplace where you would get clothing and information about how to make yourself visible at night. I've worked really hard, mainly on safety issues, to have safer crossings at Waterman. I mentioned Prospect and Pearl. I mean, these are the things that I try to do on your behalf, and I'll work with you if I know the issues that you face or if I can anticipate some of the things that you face. As far as housing, once again, going to the university and saying, is there a way that you can make housing more affordable for people who want to stay on campus? Are they forced? I hear people sometimes are forced off. The other thing that, I don't have time, but let me just tell you, I don't agree with our alcohol policy of 21 and older. If I can send you to defend me and die for me at 18, then I think you have the right to drink.
Okay, so unfortunately we don't have any more time for questions, but I'm going to open up to the final statements. Carmen, we're going to start with you. You can take 2 minutes to just talk about what you need to get out before we end this debate.
Yeah. I just want to start by thanking all of you who put this debate on and thanking all of you who took the time to be here tonight. You are proof that students are involved and engaged and care about this community. I'd just like to say that I do have the mayor's endorsement and I'm extremely proud of the progress that administration has made, but I'm also a person who really cares about active listening and wants to be involved with my communities and neighbors, and I will bring their questions and their concerns to the table as well, and I am dedicated to that, and I am committed to that, and I will be 100% committed on April 1st to hitting the ground running and representing those concerns, and I do feel very strongly and very passionately about that, and I would be absolutely honored to be a part of this community and represent all of you alongside the long-term residents who have really made this the kind of community that I call my home, and I know so many of you call your home because you love it, you're passionate about it, you care about your surroundings, you care about the issues that impact Burlington, and I thank you so much for being here tonight and being actively engaged.
Thank you. Well, this, I think, is our final of 3 debates, 3 weeks running, so I just want to thank Carmen for being such a kind and gracious opponent and for stepping up and participating tonight when she's not feeling 100%. Kudos to her. I have loved doing this work. I've loved it as much as anything I've ever done in my life, I think, and I want to go back and keep working. I want to keep chairing that divestment task force and moving that question about fossil fuel divestment forward. I want to work on balanced neighborhoods. I want to work on affordable housing for students, but for everybody in our community. I want a place where everyone can live and enjoy the great things about Burlington. I love doing the work. This is my home. I care really passionately about this place. I've spent most of my life here, but I've lived in other cities around the country, San Francisco, Boston. I've traveled internationally, so I think I bring a really nice mix of like a strong passion for my community, but not an insular one. I've been part of a lot of other kinds of communities. I've been part of the UVM community in lots of different ways for a long time now. Actually, my grandparents worked at UVM. My grandfather started the art department here at UVM. So I would love to work with all of you. I would love to bring you into closer dialogue with your neighbors who are longer-term residents, and I can promise you that I will work tirelessly and always listen. Thank you.
Well, thank you for hosting this debate, and I'm so excited that so many people came tonight to listen. I've represented this ward for a long time, and I still have the energy and the desire to make Burlington an even better place to live that would welcome everybody. I think that we've reduced the barriers that used to exist between the university and the residents. We still have more work to do. I'm committed to that. I would love students to become more part of the community coalition because some neighbors do attend, and that's one of the ways we have direct interface. And also I'd like people to come to the neighborhood planning assembly occasionally. It really is nice to have direct face-to-face contact, not just emails or other social media ways of interacting. I'm committed to making Burlington a place that you want to maybe stay and live in, or live in for a short time while you're here. And I'm also committed to the people that have stayed here like I for 20, 30, 40 years. It's a great place to be, and I look forward to representing you. Thank you.
So I am a student candidate, and I'm proud to be a student. My grassroots campaign has been focused on talking to students and long-term Burlingtonians to really talk about the issues. And the town-gown issues, the student-resident relations, is huge for me, and I have experience on attending MPA meetings, working on that. The affordable housing and landlord accountability issue is something very dear to me, and I've had numerous discussions with leaders and the mayoral administration. Improving our infrastructure is another issue that is very dear to me. So I think that being pro-student obviously does not avoid my responsibility to long-term Burlingtonians, but I think that there's been a real dichotomy, a real separation of students and long-term Burlingtonians, calling them so-called students and residents. And I think that it really needs to be known that students are residents, students are a voice and an opinion in these wards. And we shouldn't just separate them just because they're only here for 4 years, but they're wanting to stay. And I think that these 3 issues really speak to that. By improving these issues as a student on the City Council, I will be helping students actually stay in Burlington and really improve their dedication. So again, my distinction between my candidates, the experience, the dedication, and the creativity, and obviously the energy as I've been working full-time and having the campaign as my second job or so. So I really would love your support as fellow students, and thank you to everyone who came out and are actively engaged.
I'm still thinking as of right now what I want to say. So we'll see how I do. I have a closing statement prepared. I'm not going to read it. We've talked enough about me and who I am and what I want to do and the differences between all the different people up here. I think what I would rather spend a little bit of time on is talking about you all and talking about the students and talking about the opportunity as I see it that you all have to actually have that voice. Because of course you'll hear it's a great talking points have been said, the student voice is important. Well, in the past there hasn't really been one in city government. And I think that isn't an issue of whether or not a student or a non-student is on the board. We could talk about that another time. For me, it's a lack of participation at the polls. If you all want to make a statement, you all need to vote and get registered and vote absentee if you won't be in town. For me, kind of where I'm coming from in this election and how important I think student participation is that I will honestly say to you, I would prefer to have you all, the student body, vote in mass to where it makes news and where people actually recognize it as an actual voice collectively, and have me lose and have my competitor win, than have me be victorious in an election that in years past has been dismal and minuscule in both student and non-student votes. So what I would say is I would encourage you all to vote. I would appreciate your vote, but even if not, it's important that you do.
Okay, everyone, thank you again so much for joining us today. Like I said, if you have questions about specific details about voting, I'll be here after, and my committee will be around in our office hours as well, so pull me aside. That's it.